Thank you for joining the Remote Career Summit 2020 hosted by Arc. I will be introducing Weiting in just a few minutes, but before we get started, I'd like to give you a few important reminders about how today's event works, okay? So I'm Christine, I'm the head of marketing here at Arc, and I'm officially kicking off today's exciting virtual event. So we're super excited to be bringing together many interesting people from many places to talk about all things related to remote careers, from the leading voices in the remote industry to remote professionals such as marketers, managers, developers, designers, and more. All right, so now without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the founder and CEO of Arc. This is the organization that's hosting the event today, Weiting Liu. So Weiting is a two-time YC and Techstars alum, and he spent over a decade leading startups. So he believes that the future of work, or remote work, will be able to connect talent worldwide with better opportunities. Weiting holds a master's degree in management science and engineering from Stanford University. So let's take it over. I'll give the stage over to Weiting to share with you today's keynote address.
All right, thank you so much, Christine. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first annual Remote Career Summit. I know we have a pretty global audience here today, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Weiting. I'm the founder of Arc. To kickstart the conference here today, let me just share my screen here first. We'd love to give a quick recap on the overall state of remote work right now. As you know, Arc is a remote hiring platform, and I'd love to share with you what we've been observing in the world of remote work in the year 2020. So the year 2020, some say it's written by Stephen King, directed by Quentin Tarantino, and we're actually only halfway in. As wild as it may have seemed, huge changes also mean paradigm shifts. We actually believe historians will look back in the year 2020 and say, this is the year that internet really happened. Companies are suddenly remote. There's unprecedented level of unemployment and economic uncertainties, and there's an increased awareness of diversity and inclusion. So how has all of these been impacting our workplaces? Well, first, interest in remote job has exploded. So search volumes for remote jobs has increased by 488%, and search queries for remote hiring has 19x. And remote work is definitely in the process of crossing the chasm to the industry, to the mainstream. In fact, some think that it has actually crossed the chasm on a specific date, May 12, 2020. That's the date when Jack Dorsey announced that all Twitter employees will be free to work from anywhere forever. And soon after, many companies has also followed suit. Facebook, Shopify, Coinbase, and many more have announced that they have an updated remote work policies that would give employees a lot more flexibilities in terms of working remotely. And of course, being remote and distributed is a spectrum, and different companies have adopted a variety of different remote policies. On the left here, you have the proud and fully distributed companies such as Automatic, which is probably the OG in the remote space, and companies such as GitLab, Doist, and Zapier. These are companies working across different time zones and thriving on excellent asynchronous communications. So many of them actually have a booth at the job fair here today, so please make sure you go there and check them out. Then there are also the remote first companies such as Basecamp, Trello, Square, and more. These great companies design their processes around remote employees and often prefer to hire for remote positions. They might still have an office from time to time, but working at offices is mostly optional. And there's the remote-friendly companies such as Slack, Atlassian, and also Facebook. Those companies hire for many remote positions, while also allowing or potentially requiring people to work together in person. Finally, there are companies who haven't fully embraced remote work yet, but are forced to go remote due to COVID-19. So why is this happening right now? So why has the future been accelerated? So as someone, Alexei, has pointed out, so historically there are three reasons that have been preventing remote work from being adopted by the mainstream. Those three reasons are inertia, status, and productivity. So inertia, it has largely been addressed by COVID-19, and the status, since Twitter and some of the world's best companies are now fully embracing remote work, and there are great conferences such as this one that are trying to help bring remote work mainstream. So remote work is now legit and is no longer as edgy and as weird as before. And in terms of productivity, well, after working remotely for a few months, there are people who have started to realize, hey, my productivity and my colleagues' productivity working at home is approximately the same as working at our fancy downtown San Francisco office. So is it really still necessary to demand everyone to work out of the office every single day? And more importantly, there are just tons and tons of innovations that are happening in this space. So the landscape of remote tools is just exploding. From remote collaboration, remote whiteboarding, remote hiring, remote compliance, remote onboarding, and the list goes on and on. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of companies that are innovating and literally changing the world by solving challenges of remote work and help make remote work even more mainstream. And many of these companies are also here with us today, such as Feel and Mural. So please make sure to check them out at the Employer Expo. So as remote work is becoming mainstream, what does this mean for the professional? What does it mean for all the remote professionals out there? So, well, first, just like organizations are becoming more remote friendly or even more remote first, professionals are now viewing remote opportunities as legitimate career options as well. So 73% of tech talent will now accept a job offer without ever meeting their teams in person. So the talent is becoming more willing to decide major career moves remotely and work from anywhere in the world. So with a lot more flexibility, we might also start to see a wave of migration out of tech hubs, as 53% of professionals say that it is likely for them to move out of San Francisco and other tech hubs to less expensive regions. So one interesting potential stat for us to monitor is the real estate pricing in Hawaii. And let's see if the housing market in Hawaii is going to explode in the next 12 to 36 months. But of course, so remote work might also introduce new challenges and still might not be for everyone. So for example, so Arc, we actually do monitor several top remote jobs out there. If we were to look at the recent roles that companies are hiring remotely, actually most of the remote jobs are still senior roles. So there's some people do believe that if you're a junior and coming out of college, the whole remote industry may not be as ready for you as, say, if you're a senior developer who have years of experience. So there's still work to be done in this regard. And this also brings new challenges. So for example, as Shane Parrish of Farnham Street pointed out to the CEO of Shopify on the Twitter, that you no longer compete against the best people in your city for a job. Now you compete with the best person in the world. So the job market historically has been a local market. Now by removing the geographical constraints, you will now be competing against talent all over the world. So working remotely actually does not mean working from home all the time, right? Not all tech workers want to work remotely at home all the time. So only 35%, the minority in the workforce, prefer to work 100% remotely out of the office. So after talking about the professionals, let's talk about what does all of this mean for organizations. So ARC has surveyed hundreds of CEOs in the industries about the biggest benefits that you've experienced from hiring remotely. The two biggest reasons are one, access to better talent, two, access to a more diverse candidate pool. So speaking of diversity, we actually do have a very interesting talk today at 12:10 p.m. about diversity in remote teams. So please do make sure that you join that great discussion. A possible third benefit that you might be thinking about is actually cost. However, as there are actually companies such as Facebook that do adjust salaries based on the cost of living. So there are still a lot of questions. Some of them are philosophical questions that remain about salaries. There are companies such as GitLab and Facebook, they do adjust for cost of living based on your location. And there are also companies such as Zapier and Basecamp that pay a global salary independent of location. So it kind of remains to be seen how the world is going to turn out going forward. So all in all, ultimately, hiring remotely has this huge potential to the most diverse team in history. So this is going to be a very, very promising future that we all look forward to. So of course, that we all know that remote work is not perfect, right? It is still a nascent industry with tons of areas for improvements and also opportunities as well. So for example, remote work right now is still mostly work for software and IT industries. And there are entire industries such as design, public admin, and entertainment that might not be as ready. Managers also mostly still lack the experiences of leading remote teams, right? Close to 76% of remote managers have less than 5 years of experience doing so. And we all know that managing a remote team can be quite a challenge for some. So there's a lot of learnings that all of us can have. And of course, there are still tons of challenges that require more innovations to solve. There are still real challenges that still exist for many remote professionals and many remote companies. Some of the biggest issues still involved with collaboration, communications, and loneliness. And we're very glad to see there's just tons and startups and entrepreneurs and practitioners tackling all these problems and challenges already. So today, with our Remote Career Summit, this is our chance to hear from 25 plus some of the world's leading remote experts today about how remote work really works for both from the professional's perspective and from the organization's perspective. The whole goal for us to organize a career summit such as this one is for all of us to connect and share knowledge. We'd like to bring everybody together, the pioneering leaders in remote work, remote professionals, aspiring remote professionals, and remote companies and aspiring remote companies, right? So together, we are the remote work industry, right? We help drive the trend, we help create the future. We really believe that future historians will look back and say that 2020 is the year that work has been decoupled from the office. Work since 2020 has been freed from just happening in the physical office. And now we build this future together. Hope you enjoyed the event today, and let's build the future of remote work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Weiting, for that awesome keynote. We learned a lot about what's going on in year 2020.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.